Hello Faster Masters, this is Marlene, and in today's video we're going to talk about some home exercises that you can do, land exercises, to improve your feathering and squaring motion with your hands and your forearms. If you're going to feather and square with your fingers, you have to spend a little bit of time on land preparing your forearm extensors because these muscles are not quite ready to do a lot of this work because the focus of your extensors of your fingers is simply to take your hand out of flexion. So by nature, your flexors, which are your gripping muscles, are much stronger than your extensors. So I'm going to show you some stretches and some exercises that you can do at home to prepare for working on feathering and squaring with a finger motion versus a strong wrist motion when you get back in the boat. The first thing I'm going to show you are a couple of stretches for your forearms. And when you stretch your forearm, put your arm out straight and bend down at the wrist and then put a little bit of gentle overpressure and then come back up. Bend down again, a little bit of overpressure just until you feel a slight draw in the forearm. And you can do that 10 times. If your muscles are tired, this stretch will feel quite nice. Another stretch is for your forearm flexors here. And bend up at the wrist, fingers pointing towards the sky, a little bit of overpressure here. And I'm not pushing at the top of my fingers, I'm pushing here at the base of my fingers. To get a little bit of stretch in the flexors, like that. And then what feels nice here is to go each individual finger, like that. That feels quite nice when your hands are tired after rowing, and your thumb. So again here, then go each finger, just draw back towards you, and a little bit of overpressure here for your flexor. Our next exercise is for mobilizing the flexors of the fingers. And when you feather with your fingers, this joint right here at the base of your fingers is the pivot point. So you have to learn how to make this motion. So if you put your hand straight, keep your fingers straight, and then just make an L shape with your fingers, and then come back up. L shape with your fingers, and then come back up. This is kind of an unusual motion for most people, but it's important to isolate this movement. Okay, this is called a flat fist, and then back up. And then again here, the next one is keeping this joint straight, but curling your fingers down and then back up. Curling your fingers down and back up. This is isolating two different groups of flexors in your fingers. Okay, so one flat fist, practice that. And then curling your fingers down and then back up. Curling your tips down to the base of your fingers and then back up. And you can do each one about 10 times, and you should practice it on both hands. You may find one hand is a little bit easier than the other one. The flat fist, and then curling the fingers down and then back up. Curling the fingers down and then back up. Next, I'm going to show you how I'm holding the grip. So here I have my index finger close to the end of the handle, and there's very little space between my thumb and my index finger. This is called the closed grip, and you want to have your index finger close to the end of the handle for your best amount of leverage, and let your thumb rest where it's comfortable for you. It could be on the end, it could be down a little bit lower. It should be comfortable. You don't need to use your thumb to put a lot of pressure against the oar, and in fact that will actually restrict using your fingers to feather. So here I'm going to position my grip. I just have a grip of an oar handle here. I'm going to position this as if my blade is square, and I put a white mark here so you can see that. Now when I'm going to feather, I'm simply going to open up this joint, which is, we did our exercise with the flat fist, and let the handle roll out into my fingers, just like that, okay? And you can see how the white line is moving to show the different position of the grip. So I would suggest to get an oar handle grip and bring it home and practice this exercise of opening and closing your hands, open and closing your fingers. Okay, that's from the front. Then go to the side and practice this, letting the handle move in your fingers, opening and closing the hand. And practice that with both hands. Now I'm keeping my thumb very, very soft on the handle here. I'm not putting really any pressure on my thumb as I do that, because if I push hard on that, that's going to actually restrict my finger motion. So here my thumb is very, very light, and I'm really letting the handle move freely. Sometimes I actually even take my thumb off, but that's up to you, and it depends on your comfort level. But start practicing this exercise. You can do 10 or 15 repetitions. Basically, you're going to feel these extensor muscles working, and this is what you want to train on land at home to get ready to be able to do this in the boat. Now, to strengthen your finger extensors and flexors, we can do exercises with elastic to apply some resistance. And I'm using a yellow band here. This is actually quite a softer resistance. And what I'm going to do is practice scraping my fingers, basically drawing into a flexion motion against the elastic. So here I'm going to hold the elastic and start with my fingers more straight and draw back and then release, and then draw back and then release, and then draw back and release. And you can practice sets of 10 or 15 repetitions this way, and this does help target the strength of the finger flexors in the forearms, just to give you a little bit more endurance here. Okay. Now to work the extensors, we have to do this kind of motion, pushing the fingers up like we did in our earlier stretches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually put it right over the top of my fingers, and I'm going to start from a flexed position, and I'm going to push up against the elastic. And this is helping to strengthen the extensor muscles, which open up that finger joint. No, it looks kind of like a funny exercise, but it really does work to target, to strengthen that motion as you push your fingers up. Okay, so you just want to do that against resistance. And you know, there are various types of resistance, but you might even use just a big rubber band. But you do want to do something against resistance this way to push against the resistance as you open your fingers. Okay, here's another exercise. This is a domestic rolling pin, and this is another little prop that you can use to work on practicing your feathering and your squaring. So now here, if you were a sweep rower, you can hold one end of the handle here and pretend this is your inside hand, and you can practice feathering and squaring. And here I would advise to keep your thumb pretty lightly underneath the handle so that you're focusing more on the fingers, and again letting the handle roll out into your fingers versus a hard motion like that you're really forcing your wrist down and putting a lot of stress on the tendons of your wrist. So you can hold one end like this. You can practice rolling that out, okay? Another thing that is a really good exercise is just to practice wrist curls like that to strengthen your wrist. It can go both ways, go away from you and then also come towards you like that. Okay. If you want to do that with resistance, what you can do is you can tie a rope around a dowel or something like that with a small weight on the end, and you can practice winding the rope up from the floor and then winding it back down. Those are called wrist rolls. We used to do those in the old days. But these are again to target these forearm extensors and flexors, build up some endurance on land before you go to the water. So I'm sitting on the ergometer right now, and I'm going to show, and I have two grips from oar handles. Okay, now we've practiced our feathering and squaring, but here is an exercise that you can practice if you're having trouble with your crossover. Okay, so if you're a sculler and your hands are like this, we call this stacking, and you can see that there's a big differential between where your two handles are. So we want to try to level out those handles and bring them actually more into this type of a position, so that if I were looking at you straight from the stern, your handles are going to be at a very, very close level to each other. So we can do this mini pause drill here on the erg, and you can practice this pattern at home, particularly if right now you're not on the water and you want to do some land exercises. So here I'm going to start at the release here. Okay, I'm going to start at the release. As my hands come away, I'm going to come to the crossover, and I'm going to focus on my right hand tucking in behind the left hand. And you have to have an open palm for this so that your handles are fairly close together. And then we can come up the slide, we can come back, practice the same crossover organization of our hands, come to the release. Notice that I'm keeping my forearms really level. Come back to the crossover, hands separate as you place the blade in the water, come back to the crossover, separation. So one thing I'd like to note is here on the drive, once you get to this point of the crossover, from here, watch how I just let my elbows move out to the side so that I keep my forearms level, okay? I think this is very important here, from crossover to crossover. All right, so this drill, we're going to do a mini pause here. We're going to go crossover, let my index finger touch the heel of my hand, come up, move through the drive, back to the crossover. I let the index finger of my right hand touch the heel of my left hand, come back up. So focus on crossover to crossover. And what I'm looking for here is not seeing a lot of motion in the elbows. We're looking for this to stay nice and level, as if we were trying to keep our boat very, very level. If we're doing something like that, obviously we're collapsing into the bow. We don't want to practice that. So let's practice from here, crossover, keeping the forearms level with the water, back of the hand, back out to the crossover here. So we'll take a mini pause. We'll come up. Take a stroke, back to a mini pause. We'll come up and take a stroke, back to a mini pause where index finger of our right hand touches the heel of our left hand. Okay, so enjoy. Practice some of these drills and help you prepare to go back on the water soon.